Hey, Caden, thanks for joining today.
How's it going, Paul? Nice.
Good, good. Yeah, I'm
Yeah, I'm
excited to talk
excited.
to you. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. And I'm looking really want to start in some of the really big initiatives that you're working in. I know that you work with young adults, even adults, really people of all ages. Before I start talking about what you're doing, I'd rather hear from you first. And then
Yep.
we'll dive in, and I have some questions about some of these big stuff. So tell me a little bit about the VIT group and everything you're working on.
Yes. So to start off, my name's Caden Vittorini. I'm 20 years old. I'm a college student. I go to Western Michigan, and my major is leadership and strategy. And you're probably wondering, 20 years old, right? What is he putting together? But how I got started was my mom has done some coaching in the past. She does some more like young professional coaching now, but before it was the younger generation. So what happened was I was doing a lot of her one-on-one sessions, helping her smaller workshops, help running it. And the parents were coming up to her and saying, "Hey, who's Caden? Oh, that's your son? My son and daughter are interested in working with him." But I didn't have anything at the time. So it was parent after parent. I was like, and then I realized I had a gift and I was connecting with those kids on that young and relatable level, right? I'm 20 years old and the clients that I coach is ages 8 to 18. So they look at me as that positive influence, friend, and coach and mentor in their life that they know is always going to be there for them. So I'm a certified professional life coach. I do the one-on-one mentoring and coaching with kids ages 8 to 18 on life skills. So I'm teaching them communication, but under communication, things such as body language, presenting themselves, types of questions, ways to connect, how to start, expand, and end a conversation successfully, because that's what's missing in the younger generation. And that's what I'm seeing most is when the parents are coming to me, it's my child doesn't know how to have a conversation, right? Whether it's with even the parents or friends, coaches, teachers, even ordering their own food at a restaurant. So that's what's missing. And why I started was I saw the gap from the younger generation to my generation and going up in life and as the ages progress, but how hard the pandemic hit them, how social isolation
Absolutely.
set them back so much. And it's hard for them to have a conversation. They don't know how to start it. They don't know how to approach someone. They're not confident doing that. And I also teach skills such as motivation, goal setting, healthy mind and body, self confidence, time management, procrastination, and a lot of other great things. So that's the
Wow.
first
Yeah.
main niche of Vit Factor. And then going into my second is I host the school assemblies, do that very motivational, high energy. And then I also do some community events. So instead of changing one life, being able to change hundreds or thousands at one time.
That's amazing. I
Yep.
absolutely love it. And where I actually want to start with is you really touched on a number of different things, but I think that communication thing was a really big thing. And I know you're really driving at that because obviously it's something that's, I'm assuming that's a commonality that you're seeing
Yep.
amongst this age group.
Yeah.
And I could do one of those back in my day, but there is something to be said about, and I would like to get your opinion on some of this too, is the barriers of even social media, being
Yep.
plugged into computers and phones and TVs and iPads, everything above. But I think some of those communication standpoints, just the interpersonal skills and do you have, is it, when you work with people, is it, I don't want to say it's a one fit all,
Yep.
but are there certain approaches that you start with to see where somebody's at and assess them at that young age to, from a
Yes.
communication standpoint?
So I start off by I always talk to them and say first impressions are super important, and first impressions are made within 7 seconds. So
Mhm.
by the time I get on the Zoom, I'm talking with the kid. I'm already starting to put some things together with how I'm going to approach the teaching, right? Whether it's really in depth and taking them to the next level. Because what I do is I take also good kids who are really excelling in life and I take them to the next level. But
Mhm.
also maybe those kids that are holding themselves back in some way or have some more
Sure.
limitations than others, bringing them up. So I work with kids in many different backgrounds at many different levels. But yes, like going back, definitely reading them and saying, okay, this is how I'm going to approach it for this kid. But also my session right after, I'm going to approach it this way, completely
Absolutely.
different.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Because I imagine too, this is going to tie into it. And I don't want to digress because I want to stay in communication, but you
Yeah.
probably come across a lot of limiting beliefs or those patterns you're going to start to see in these young adults, even in older adults, that are going to show up in some way, shape, or form. But I don't want to, I want to go there, but I do want to stay on that communication because communication is near and dear to really some of the things I'm trying to work on with people as well. And I think I think sometimes when people think of communication, they think of, I have to get in front of a group, some type of public speaking or something like that, which is, I think is one of those, when you ask people their biggest fears and phobias, I think public speaking is one of those top ones. But it's in small ways. I think the steps and the progress through your life, how to interact. You even said ordering something at a store or picking up a phone and calling somewhere like a store. We'll just say in that same
Right.
example. I think some people are terrified by that stuff and it fascinates me. And that's just because I'm a talker. But at the same time, I don't know if there was much dependency on that communication because there's a reliance or a bridge, even today's day, with a virtual communication. Obviously,
Yep.
there's live chats, there's anonymously ordering, but approaching that. So I really do want to stay there before we leave there with that.
Yeah.
Do you find that kids or young adults, I shouldn't say just kids, have you seen, is it dependencies on other forms of communication that happens, or is it just this interpersonal expression, self-expression? Is there some source in that, or is it just really each person is their own thing that you're finding
So
at
definitely
this
each
stage?
person's their own thing, but I think it's both of those. So starting off with the social media, they're just always on it, right? Whether
Sure.
even if it's just video games or scrolling on TikTok or texting on Snapchat, right? They're looking at the phone. They're typing their fingers to get the response, or even they have hours or 5, 10 minutes to put together the response. But when they're in a
Mm,
conversation, they don't know how to go back and forth like naturally, like you and I are doing, Paul. So
yeah.
definitely that gap where they're on their phone for hours throughout the day, and then they leave their house, go to a restaurant, go to a family party, and then they're like, they don't know what to do because they're used to talking through a screen or talking through a headset on video games or something like
Yeah.
that. So that's what I'm noticing for that. And then what was that second part you brought up again?
Um, I think, well, we were talking about, I got veered off a little bit on that. Here, I'll come back to it, but I think you,
Yeah.
before we leave there, is like you touched on something really interesting. It's that time of the gap between communication. I think that is, it's you, that's a really big point because I even see it in business where people, they'll stick to emails. They won't pick up the phone. They'll want to stick to
Mhm.
emails because they have
Yeah.
time to respond. I think that there's also a sense this might tie into it. I don't want to generalize too much, but in some case, it's a sense of critical. They're going to be criticized. There's exposure there. They don't know how to respond, so they don't know what they're going to say. And
Yeah.
people generally aren't. I would say too, and this is, I will generalize a little bit, but I would say in my experience of kind of observation is that people aren't necessarily with somebody concerned or worried about what somebody else is going to say. They're concerned about what they're going to say, their response. What am I
Right.
responsible for? How do I, and they have this, there's a closure in that window. And especially if it's heated or especially if there's a little bit of pressure on it. But yeah, in that window, I think you really touched on something great there is the
Yeah.
gap of response time.
And even on the other side of things, if they're a good communicator, it may be that they're afraid that the person's not going to like them. They're afraid
Oh,
the conversation's not going to go well. They're
okay.
afraid that they're going to say something wrong or word something wrong. So it's different little things within communication that might be holding them back. So it might just be their self confidence and that they're nervous and afraid that no one's going to like them or the new person they're
You're
meeting is going
right.
to put together thoughts. And I'm like, that's not really how it works. No one's
No,
just going to meet someone and be like, oh, I don't want to talk to you anymore and just walk away. But
right.
there's different things within communication that definitely separates people back from, yeah, that overall topic communication, whether
Sure.
why they don't want to talk to somebody.
Yeah, that acceptance is another big one too. That self, of course, there's a level of self acceptance,
Yeah.
but that reaction to somebody else's,
Mm.
am I going to sound stupid? Are they going to that judgment, that
Right.
allowance of somebody else's judgment? When you're really just you're giving that person, you're giving them the energy, you're giving them that power that's not, they didn't ask for, they aren't criticizing you on. You're giving this situation much more. You're giving your power away in a lot of these situations. Yeah, that's, I really enjoy that you're working with them on that level because those interpersonal skills, that's going to be the binder, and communication is, it's just, it's paramount. You I don't care who you are. At some point in your life, you're going to talk to somebody else, pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
You're not going to go very far without having to have a conversation.
Right.
And there is on that subject too, is I have this little bit of a tool because I've talked to people about communication, mostly in business and maybe in sales, or a little about high pressure, or if there's a manager or boss that's, I don't want to say coming at them, just asking questions. I'll say I'll give them just use three little tools. And inherently, we do these just organically. We already do this stuff, but maybe have a little bit of awareness and mindfulness, which we can touch on too. But I would say that three things that you can start to benchmark a little bit in the conversation when somebody's, this is just a person to person conversation. Because sometimes people get lost in the focal point. Are we talking about, so there's a clarity perspective as far as, are we talking about the wide angle? Are we talking about the 32,000 foot view? Are we talking about a very specific thing?
Mhm.
Then the next one is, are we talking about a creative side of our brain or is it a very logical side of our brain? And then the other one is a time frame. Are we talking about the past, the present, the future? In these windows of three, it's not an all collective, but within these windows of three, you're going to at least maybe be able to pull focus. Because I think there's times when the other person might be jumping all over, talking about something very general, then getting into a specific. And then in that point is when people don't know how to respond in
Mhm.
that situation.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that. Now you get frantic and your mind starts to cloud instantly. So that's going to go back into, we do this, or everybody does this stuff already. You were already trying to figure it out. But if we have a little bit of a, what I like to call an inner breath, if we just can have that moment for a second, just calm down, start to create a little bit of awareness. Where am I? Where is the navigation point in this? And then realizing, where am I on this scale? Am I talking about the past? Am I bringing up some other stuff and I'm off the rails talking about this and they're talking about this? But those are just a little bit of, even just on a practical sense of awareness, if
Yeah.
we can get a little bit of guidance in there and understand where we're at. I feel there's a little bit of power. You can take your personal power and close it back and know where at least you're showing up in this conversation.
Yeah. I
So,
yeah, I like that a lot, and even, like, me personally, I'm always working on my communication skills, thinking about those 3 topics that you covered and how to really connect with that person on that level that I'm looking for, so I'm constantly working on my communication too. That's why I tell
absolutely.
my clients is, "Things that I'm teaching you, I have already done or I'm currently working on." So we're in this together, right? I'm coaching you, but I'm also working on things myself on the back end.
Yeah, nobody has it figured out ever.
Right.
That's a lifetime. That's the lifetime achievement award. We all are working on it. There's things that we become proficient at. Maybe we have an inherent talent towards that we can develop, but there's another aspect over here that we feel like a hot mess in.
Yeah.
It's just that's how it works, and we do it. It doesn't matter what age. Somebody could be 90 years old. Maybe they just care a little bit less about what the next person thinks, but there's a level of, we never perfect it. That's the human. That's the human journey. So I love that. But I do want to talk about, because I mentioned this ties into a little of the communication, but I think a little bit more, maybe even an emotional standpoint or that acceptance you talked about, because I think in that window ties in some of the limiting beliefs or the patterns that people get stuck in, those thought processes. And this is, in essence, when you're working with somebody as maybe a coach, you're identifying some of those patterns, or you're seeing something that you people recognize in themselves, but they might not fully understand of where the source of some of these points of limitations come from too. I won't ask because I know it's exactly what you said before. It's not a one fit all. It's a journey.
Yeah.
It's an expanse and stuff. Do you work with some of these young adults too? Do you touch on emotional capacities or EQs as far as there's emotional intelligence as well, or does it really tie into everything you're talking about on all these ancillary points?
Yeah, so I touch on many different topics. So even like going in depth, like more like leadership or power of visualization, energy and attitude. So I touch on many different things that goes into the mental side of things and how if you work on yourself and stay consistent, get into good daily habits. And Vit Factor's motto is 1% better every day. So if you're focusing on that the day and then going into the next day, win that day. Try to become 1% better because I feel like a lot of people's issues, especially with the clients I work with, they're looking at the month, the 6 months, the year, what they have to do in that time frame. Take it day by day because that's when
Yeah.
people get stressed out, overwhelmed, and then their motivation goes down and they feel like they can't achieve goals and then they don't believe in themselves and then their self-confidence goes down. So I think just starting with that 1% better is the overall topic of the coaching and mentoring that I do, and then breaking it down into all these different life skills that I teach.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yeah, I the 1% better rule is very powerful. It's to just understand that, because what it also creates is small celebrations, small wins. I
Yep.
think there's something that happens too with people as they start beating themselves up. Nobody could be rougher on you than you.
Yeah.
Like nobody, there's nothing anybody else could say that I will say far worse things to myself than anybody could hurt my feelings with.
Right.
And the that incremental better, and then also, and I call it having grace, but it's also just celebrating those little wins,
Yeah.
having grace with yourself, just being like, okay, there's 10 things that happened today, but that one bad thing that I'm focusing on, I'm really missing these other little 9 things that happen that are good. So have a little grace. Okay, I'm human. I know I'm getting hung up on that. That's okay. I have awareness. I have, now it's time to have a little mindfulness and celebrate a little some of the small
Right.
little victories. And that's that gratitude, the consistency of showing up. And do you get into anything like with some people about like gratitude journaling or any type of consistent practices like that?
Yeah, so I have a lot of my clients doing some stuff on their end, writing things down, or even texting me. So my clients know that I'm always there for them. So even outside of our sessions, they'll be texting me about something that happened with their friend or school or their sport that they just want to talk through or want some advice or an opinion or have a question. So they know that I'm always there for them. But also, I'm always in contact with the parents. So the
Mm-hmm.
parents, I'm that middleman between their son or daughter and then the parent. So what I'll do is
That's
after
great.
our sessions, I'll send a long updated text of not too much in-depth details, but today this is what we covered. We went through these things, whether it was goal reaching, strengths and limitations, self-confidence, and then this is what we're working on next week. So the parents are like, okay, I know what to look out for at home or at school or his practices to see if he's really applying what he's learning in our sessions.
That's amazing. That's really
Yeah.
cool. That's a lot of personal touch that you're putting into this.
Because I keep that confidential state between the
Yep.
client and parent, but I do want them to both trust me. I've
Yeah.
had some clients that I've been working with since the beginning of Vit Factor. So I've had Vit Factor for about 20 months now. I have some sessions or clients that I've done 50 to 70 sessions with. So I meet once a week. Our sessions are 20 minutes, but I feel like it's a good enough time to do some recap, get into some new content, and then talk about the next week and what to focus on towards the future. Because 30, 45, they start to get a little distracted. It's too much
Yeah.
information. So we stick in with that 20 minutes, lock in, put in that work, and then we'll see those results over time.
I think that's a good time frame too, because you can, it's, I'm not going to assume anything you talk about with your clients or anything like that, but I
Yeah.
imagine you're being a very good supportive role of being a positive influence, being that light in their lives and having a little bit of reinforcement on their consciousness. And again, I'm just guessing about you specifically, but that position that you're taking for that person, that's incredible because not everybody has that. I know growing up, I never had anybody that I could talk to like that. That's really cool. So what
Yeah.
happens too is not just me, many people, but you get in there's an influence, there's a social consciousness, and there's your sphere of people that you start hanging out with. And I hate to say it, I sound like an old man, but it's these friends can drag you down and pull at you. But if you it's some of it's just that programming repetition. If you're hearing somebody who is, let's just say, negative, positive, somebody's just a complainer all the time. It doesn't matter if it's at a work situation, school, just a friend, life in your family. But if you're constantly hearing that, eventually it wears on you and you start to believe that's actually that communication level is okay. It's somewhat across the board. So to have people in your life that are able to, I don't want to say reposition or help you adjust or help you refocus into a positive avenue is a very powerful thing.
Yeah. So going off that with the negative self and then bringing it back with you when you mentioned the wins, right? I what I've realized is people are negative.
Yeah.
They'll do 9 out of 10 good things correct, and they'll do one small thing wrong, and they'll just focus on that one small thing. And I always
Yeah.
say, who are you celebrating your wins with? Who is helping you win? And who are you helping win? And that leads me into my 1% team because it's such a great community and surrounding yourselves with people who are like minded, who
Mm.
want the best for themselves personally and professionally, but also want the best for you. And our team motto is give more than you take. So we're up to 55 team members
Oh
of
my gosh.
ages
Amazing.
between ages of 16 and 25. And there's entrepreneurs, professionals, students. So there's so many different backgrounds on the team that we're coming together as that young mastermind team to help one another. And I also host team Zoom calls where I bring on executives such as CEOs, VPs, best-selling authors for them to come share their focuses, their passions, their mindsets with us. And we'll finish up that with a team call, coming together, talking about the future, what we have coming up, and how we can help each other. Whether it's we're hosting an event together, we are doing volunteering to give back to the younger generation or the less fortunate. Also, team dinners that are sponsored or team networking little parties, I guess you could say, where we're all getting together to help one another. And we do want the best for each other. I am selective with who I bring on, but I couldn't be more excited with who's in my circle right now in life through family wise, friend wise, and then people in my business community. And yeah, just surrounding myself with positive people because, like you said, it's going to rub off on you.
It
And
will.
the big thing I teach just in life, but also through my one on ones, is who's in your circle. You're going to become the average of the five friends you spend the most time around. And that's a fact because
Mhm.
I've seen it before when I was in elementary, middle school, high school, and then now seeing what some of my clients are going through.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because some people have, like I mentioned, when I was growing up, I didn't really have anybody like that, but I did find myself wanting a change, wanting something different. And in my personal case, it was a little bit of isolation. So I isolated myself. But things
Yeah.
can't happen in a vacuum either. We have to grow, to expand. Sometimes it does get a little bit rigid or a little bit prickly in life, and you do need that. But I had times in my life that I felt like I really shut everybody out, and that's not. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but sometimes there is a little bit of, okay, maybe I need to separate from this group, but I don't know what the next one is. Maybe internally I want such positive people, then I need to
Yep.
start creating awareness and mindfulness in myself so that I can allow those people to come in my life and attract them. And it sounds like you have attracted an incredible sphere in your surroundings. So that's awesome. I love it. I love to hear that. And it's not about your age or anything. You're
Right.
really putting the effort, the energy, and that's any age. That's not even age specific. You
Yeah.
personally are putting out those efforts into the ether and into individuals. So that's going to come back. And that's a really powerful thing.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, I'm
Uh,
very passionate about what I do, and I gotta say, I tell my clients all the time, you gotta love what you do. You gotta
yeah.
be excited for what you're doing, whether it's a sport or who you're surrounding yourself with, or maybe a job you're trying to get into. Be excited for it. Be passionate about it, and that's when it won't feel like you're working. And that's how
Yeah.
it is for me when I do these podcasts, my one-on-one sessions, the team calls, the events that I host. I'm enjoying it. It's a community that I'm building, a mission and movement, and doesn't feel like I'm working at all, really.
You picking it up, man. You've got a big smile on your face that has you resonate that positivity.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yep.
very cool. Yeah, that's I you couldn't have said it better. I think how you show up is what you're going to produce as it goes on, and it's only going to
Right.
compound, magnify, create momentum behind it, and the excitement in there. You get in those states of flow. The creativity comes out, and
Yep.
that's when you have those big growth moments as well, that or whatever that is, if it's a progress in a career path or within school a study, or if you're going to write a book, whatever that is, you do have to enjoy it because there's things that get can get in. Let's say we go into, say, a very rigid workforce environment. There's direction, there's things that are placed upon you, responsibilities, duties. That's not necessarily what's going to get you out of bed and get you, just light you up. There's the things that have, when you have vision behind it, how you get vision is going to be through those living out some of those desires and really feeling like you're on the path making progress. That's when you're going to just truly just glow. You're going to light. You're going to go. You're going to want to do it. You want to get up early. You want to go to bed
Yep.
late. You go at it with a big smile on your face. So yes, the
Yep.
passion and the excitement is that resonates through. So
Thank you so much. Yes.
yeah. I do want to hear there's before I did want to actually ask you a little bit about events because you did a big event recently, and
Yep.
I want to ask you about that. But before we jump to that, is I would say at the age group you're focused on right now, as you get older, so goal oriented, and those disappointments or getting set off and getting too far ahead of yourself. You almost talked about it a little bit. You said people are worried about what's happening in a month, what's happening in 6 months.
Yeah.
Do you even see at the age group you're working at now? Do you Is that a big thing? Are people? I don't want to say there's living in the moment, but do you feel that these young adults coming to this next generation are putting a ton of pressure on themselves?
Yes. A ton of pressure. They're constantly looking towards the future rather than enjoying the present. So they'll be like, I have a vacation in, excuse me, I have a vacation coming up in 2 to 3 months, and they'll just focus on that. Or I have this coming up in a month, whether it's, so I have one of my clients who does wrestling and states coming up in 2 months. Focus on that day and what you have to do tomorrow. That's
Yeah.
going to get you to that point to perform your best that day. So,
Right.
yes, definitely living in the present is the biggest thing, but
Yeah.
also forgetting about the past, things that you go through. I touch on and focus on that it's okay to fail and make mistakes, but it's not okay to not try and to give up, because you look at the best people who are successful in life and they fail the most, but they don't quit. They don't throw their arms up and move on and forget that. They say, okay, they take a step back and look at the bigger picture. What did I do wrong? What changes can I make? But also, what did I do right that worked for me? And
Mhm.
how can I focus on that? So I think focusing on that day, the present, is when you're going to see that progress over time rather than looking at the bigger picture in life.
Yeah, yeah. You just ran through a great list, and then I would just add is what don't now that I've learned this, what don't I ever repeat again? What do I not have? What's that lesson I don't have to live? That's a success. That's a win. I don't have to do that again. I've
Yeah,
experienced it, and people do sometimes repeat that stuff because they haven't quite learned it. But that's okay. You're going to learn it. And then, oh man, there was another question I had in there because you were just going off on a really good roll there. I
yeah,
enjoyed that. Oh, I was going to say too is you'd say the fear of failure. There's another one, and I'm sure this is fear of success
yeah,
because I think some people get hung up, and this one is actually one of those really subtle ones. It's almost, I want to say, like an unconscious one because it's not that people they have a vision, they have a dream, they have a daydream, a little fantasy of how they want to see their life in this segment, and they love that. Then you start going down the road, and maybe there's that gap. There's a little bit of gap. Maybe I see some hurdles. Maybe I see some roadblocks. I'm not quite sure how to navigate it and stuff. But then there's what people don't sometimes realize too is that fear of success. When I'm there, some people get a little bit turned around or off course because there's also a big I think there's a feeling of responsibility there.
yeah,
So I'm responsible for this now. I own this now. I set out on the course. If I succeed at this, I'm going to own this. I'm responsible for it. And if I then, I think also this other segment of that coin can come in. If I fail, then am I going to be embarrassed? People are going to know I fail, and then the failure
right.
feels bigger. So
Yeah,
there can be a tie to those, but the fear of success, I think a lot of times can be tied to the responsibility and ownership of it. It's one thing to have the little fantasy in your head of the victory of standing on the platform with the gold medal or whatever
right.
version of that is for you, but now you're responsible for that. You are that person. You're someone you're embarking on something somewhere you've never been before, and now you're somebody new in your
Yeah,
mind. So
and
there's
yeah.
for that.
That's exactly what I teach, is taking action over words. Everybody wants to become successful, but again, it's that 1% that's actually willing to do what it takes. Take those daily action, make those changes in their life. Maybe stop some things that they enjoy doing, right? Those minor tweaks that they have to make that are going to lead them to success in achieving those goals. So I definitely think fear of success and failure butt heads, where they know what the responsibilities on them. They want to become successful, but also if they fail, they're not like it's going to be a big failure. So they'd rather
Yeah.
just not try. They'd rather just
Yeah.
not even go take that step towards what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah. That's interesting because there's in that little, daydream of the metaphor analogies, similes, but it's like standing on the podium or whatever. I guess there's that one, but then there's the version of that where I could fail at that. I could be standing at that podium and fail. So that feels bigger and more amplified probably to many people. And then
Yeah,
I can see where you can we all do it, get stuck on that little daydream, that little nightmare dream. It's not even a daydream, it's a little
right.
nightmare dream of what is
Yeah,
that on the other side of that platform. You're like, oh my gosh, I could fall off and go on. And I don't want to linger there. I think it's just there's an identification of that, recognize it, but then quickly create awareness and be mindful with yourself and go into action. Like you said, action will nullify and work through those stumbling blocks way quicker than sitting around thinking about it.
yeah.
So
Everybody thinks about it. Everybody has the words, but are you willing to take that action to make it happen?
yeah, and there's even little things. I've had little sayings too, but one of them was act first, think later. Just just start putting action to it.
Yeah,
So
I love it.
in small little ways, and things will come out of it. You don't even realize sometimes the path you set out on isn't the one you end up on,
Yep.
but you're gonna see that along the way. You're not necessarily gonna be surprised by it, but when you're in action, there'll be recognition. You can start to assess, and if it's pivoting, you're in the ship of that. You're not being swept away to sea. You're in the helm of that directional path.
Yep.
But I do. So I want to jump before we kind of end here. Is you did an event not that long ago? I think it was a couple months ago, maybe at this point, or a month ago, maybe.
Yeah, so it was actually January 4th.
Okay. Oh,
Yep.
not even a month. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I just want to talk about some of the events and putting those on. So I didn't make the event. I know some people that went. So you were able to get speakers, sponsors, and really get that word out with that in this coaching space. I'm trying to think of my really what the essence of my question is, but I think that there's just acknowledgement of doing something like that because you're going to reach more people. So I don't even
Yeah.
know if I have a question as more as just acknowledging that's really cool. Do you see yourself, do you feel like that's a good channel of communication, outlet, media, way to pull that together and mass the communication?
Yeah, so the event planning was awesome. Obviously, there's so much that goes into work with that to see the final product. Took me about 3 months to put everything together, but it was awesome. We doubled our numbers from our first Ripple Effect events. We actually hit two January 4th, which is 2 weeks ago. It was awesome. And this event is made for everybody clients, families, young professionals. A lot of businesses came with tables. So it really is meant for everybody. And the focuses were personal and professional growth, making valuable connections, and kickstarting 2024 in the right direction. So I had some awesome speakers come to speak to us, TEDx speakers, top 100 female entrepreneurs, chief marketing officers, authors. I had three speakers, but they do a bunch of different things within that. So speaking on such relevant topics such as personal brands, squeezing the day, every interaction matters. So topics everybody can relate from and add into their daily life. So it was a really great success, very high energy, motivational event. I had also like 30 sponsors who were part of the mission and
Amazing.
movement. Yeah,
Wow.
that really loved what I was doing, loved what I was
Yeah.
putting together. And I would say about 5 to 6 of them actually came with 5 to 10 attendees and got a table. So it was awesome for them to be there too and see what they're now a part of. And being a part of Vit Factor is definitely, I see it going great places, such as taking the events on the road, starting to travel. And I do have some big things for 2024 coming up.
I love it, man. Yeah, I'm sure I can see it. You're going to have that network, and I'll call it the sphere or the bubble around that is just going to continue to expand. I think
Yeah,
that's really
thank
cool,
you. And it
man.
was just awesome hearing the results even after the event of how
Yeah.
many people really met each other or have already started to do some partnerships or some businesses together. And
Yeah.
standing on that stage when I guess you could say the networking component started, when the food was coming out, everyone, the music was going. See how many people that I knew didn't know each other having awesome conversations. And I would be chiming in, hopping in, seeing what they're talking about. And it was just really great to see what I put together along with my 1% team helping me plan this event too.
That's cool. So the you obviously got a lot of great feedback then.
Yes, a lot of great feedback and people enjoyed it. And now getting the pictures and videos from the photographer and videographer, seeing the content is really exciting.
That's amazing. The that 1% group are you talking, is that just so I can understand it too, is that are you training, not training, but are you attracting and just captivating the next generation of coaches, or is it to build your group of coaching larger, or is it
Yeah, so
really?
it's just like a business, friendship, personal, professional community that I've brought together
Oh, okay,
of
yeah,
that
that
younger
community.
generation, and we're just bettering each other, helping each other, doing some business with each other. So I actually have three of my clients that I'm working with a part of the team. So I'm working with that younger generation, teaching them all these life skills, mainly mentally, but also physically, what they could do for themselves. And then having some of my older clients who are 16, 17, 18 now also be a part of the team along with my clients. So I guess you could say as clients come into my
Sure.
program, moving on, and then also maintaining client, but moving on to the 1% team.
Absolutely, and they're going to help the next and the next, and it's just going to
Yes.
expand and tree out. I do. I'm glad you mentioned too the physical component too, because obviously mental, emotional, physical, all
Yep.
just the full growth perspective. People need to
Yes.
continue to exercise their minds, their bodies. But yeah, I really appreciate this time. Phenomenal. We should do this again sometime here.
Yes,
So
no,
thanks for
thank you so much for having me on, Paul. You can, anybody watching this, you can access me through my website at www.vidfactor.com, or any of my social medias are VidFactor. So thank you so much, Paul. It was awesome to come share what I'm putting together and to hear your insights and mindset too.
perfect. All right. Thanks a lot, Caden.
Yes, of course.